All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much for being on this webinar. Yeah, we're going to talk about binge eating and overeating. And I would love to take some of your questions if you have them. So, if you do, I won't be monitoring this chat while I'm sharing, but how I'd like to do the questions is in the Q&A. So if you can see down at the bottom, there's a Q&A option. You could type your questions in there, and then I want to get to as many as I can in a little bit toward the end of the webinar. So, if you are new to me, thank you so much. If you're not new to me, thank you for being here as well. But I think there are a lot of people here who maybe aren't so familiar with me and what I do. So, my name is Dr. Amy Johnson. I have written a few books, but one called The Little Book of Big Change, which is how we find freedom from habits and anxiety and all kinds of things in our lives, really, in a way that's very different than what pretty much anyone else is talking about out there. So, I've had many habits, binge eating and overeating, just two of them. I've had lots of anxiety in my life and have found complete freedom from all of those things. And what I'm going to share with you is my story, but it's also, the stories of thousands, tens of thousands, really, of people that I have seen impacted by this understanding. So I was just super blessed to come across this when I was struggling, and when I was struggling to try to help other people find their own freedom. And, and it changed my life. What I'm going to share, I mean, it just completely changed everything. And it has. Now I've been sharing it for, I don't know, 11, 12 years, and it's changed many lives. So I'm super excited to share with you. Like I mentioned, I wrote a book called The Little Book of Big Change, which really talks about my story with binge eating, but also extends out to other habits and anxiety and all kinds of issues. And I help people in the Little School of Big Change, which is an online community and school where people from 42 countries have been through it, thousands of people from all over the world, and it goes really deep into what I'll share today. So, before I get started, I just want to say, a little bit about kind of how to hear this. So, what I'm going to share, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm going to tell you how things completely turned around for me when it came to binge eating and other eating habits. And again, what I've seen, it's not about me. What changed things for me has nothing to do with me, because these exact same things, this bigger understanding, this sense of who we really are beyond our psychology, beyond our thoughts and feelings and habits, and this sense of what our thoughts and feelings and habits really are. Like, what is this experience thing? What are these things we call urges or cravings or feelings or thoughts? We'll look at all that. A deeper understanding of that is really what's going on here. And it's what I'm going to point to. And because that's so big, really this conversation that we're going to have in less than an hour now is kind of the biggest conversation that I think humans have. like who are we and what is this about? I mean, that's really kind of where we're looking. So I just want to say that up front, because I don't, especially if you're newer to this, I don't want you to listen for strategies and, well, what did she do? Well, what did she eat? Well, what does she tell people to eat? Now, those questions will very likely be on your mind, and that's totally okay. But I just want you to kind of get a feel for this, because, and I can say this because everybody's mind works in basically the same way. When we're hearing something, especially when we're struggling and we want to see something new, we want change, our mind is just super active, right? It's just like, well, then what? And how does that work? And what do I do? And what is she saying? And what does that mean for me? So just know your mind is going to do that. My mind did it all the time too. And that's not really where it's at. If you can kind of just relax and soak this in, again, where we're pointing is so much deeper than a strategy, a to do, a step. It's so much bigger than all of that. And it's really quite amazing. And I don't want you to just to set an expectation up front. Please don't think that you have to, at the end of this hour, feel like you can really see how your binge eating is going to stop, or how your overeating is going to stop. that's too much. It's a deep conversation and we don't have that much time. So if you come away from this webinar just feeling curious, maybe seeing how this can help, but your mind won't be able to grasp it exactly, you know? So again, don't think you're going to come away saying, "Oh, I see exactly what to do now," because it's not really that kind of thing. But if you feel curious, if you feel hopeful, if you feel like, wow, this is a different direction than everything else I've tried, that's perfect. That's exactly what I hope you feel and what people usually feel when they really take this in. So that's absolutely perfect. So, okay. So again, with the Q&A, post your questions anytime. When they pop in your head, post them, but I'm not, just for my own focus purposes, I won't look at that until toward the end. So let me start by telling you a little bit about my experience with binge eating and overeating, and the details of what I'm going to share. I just want you to know I've been there. I'll just share a bit about what I went through, but the details aren't what's important. We'll get to the important part at the end of my story. So um, I like probably many of you, for a very, very long time, looking back, I can see how overeating and even things like hiding food and sneaking food and just food being comfort and all kinds of things around food um, were there for a really long time, even from the time of being a little kid. I was dieting when I was, a kid, because that's what the adults around me did. They were counting calories and they were drinking Tab or whatever the diet soda was of the 80s and all the fad diets of the 80s. They were doing aerobics and that's what people did. And so even though I was not an overweight kid, it wouldn't have mattered if I was or not. I was just going to do what the adults were doing. And so I can see, again, now looking back, I can see how all of this thinking, all of this meaning around food and how much and what's okay and what's not okay, and it feeling like comfort, and then it also at the same time feeling like something I should avoid, started very early on. And I'm guessing for many of you, it's a similar kind of story. So um, that was just that, right? That was just my childhood. Things really uh, came to a hard point for me when I was in my late 20s. So I had had a lot of anxiety. I had had lots of panic attacks, and anxiety was a big part of my life in my early 20s and beyond before that. But I kind of was at a point where the anxiety felt like it was kind of better. I wasn't having panic attacks all the time. I felt like I was okay for the most part. It looked different. But what I see now, again, I didn't see at the time, but what I see now is I still had a pretty busy mind. I still had some angst there, some anxiety that I wouldn't have called anxiety, but it led me to kind of search for things, and my mind was always going, and I was always trying to find some kind of comfort. And around that same time, I had quit smoking. I'd smoked while I was in graduate school. I quit smoking and I kind of started exercising regularly. And I went on this sort of health kick, which really quickly turned obsessive, because when you have a really busy mind and everything looks like kind of all or nothing, that's what happens, right? So you're a little anxious and you're like, ooh, exercise feels good. And ooh, look, I lost some weight and maybe I can do this. And it very quickly took on this life of its own that never had anything to do with food, never really had anything to do with weight or fitness or any of that stuff. It was, I can see now, again, it was just my mind being very busy, and it turned whatever I was doing into an obsession, this very extreme thing. And so um, it was also a time in my life, and again, these specific details don't matter. So if this is not the case for you, it's okay. I'm just kind of painting a picture of where I was. It was also a time in my life, my late 20s, when I had finished graduate school. I was in my first kind of real job, real adult job. I was living with my boyfriend turned fiance, lots of change there in a new city. I didn't like my job. I realized this is not the career for me. So I had all kinds of angst and crisis going on around that. And, it was kind of a tough time in my life with a lot of uncertainty. And on top of it, the way I was seeing to kind of cope with that and distract myself from it was to keep this perfection diet exercise thing going. So I can remember really clearly, and I was just thinking about this morning for the first time in a long time. I don't know, it's weird to say, but it feels like one of my first real binges. I was so overwhelmed, so unhappy, just kind of that feeling of just kind of wanting to crawl out of your skin, and just have someone else's life. Like everything felt uncomfortable. And on top of that, I was really hard on myself. It's like, oh, great. Now I'm 29, as if that's old. Felt like it at the time. Now I'm 29 and I'm in this career I don't like. And what's happening with my life? And I ate too much yesterday, so I can't eat today. And all of this, just happened. And I remember the thought popping into my head, oh my gosh, all that food I saw at the grocery store yesterday, and I knew exactly what it was. How amazing would it feel to just go say, screw it, and just eat all of that? And that thought kind of scared me, to be honest. I mean, it was just a thought, but I was kind of taken aback by it. Like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, really? And again, like I said, it's not that I was a stranger to eating, eating for comfort and hiding food and doing all that kind of stuff, really. But this just felt different. It felt more extreme. And I can remember my mind kind of working it out. Like, I was in my cubicle, my corporate job at that time. And I remember knowing, okay, I probably have time to get to the store, buy everything I'm fantasizing about, take it home and eat it. And I have about 20 minutes to do that before my husband, then boyfriend, fiance, whatever he was, comes home. And it was like this rush. I'm like, I'm doing it. And I did it. And then I had to dispose of the containers and do all the stuff that comes along with that. But it was interesting because I mean it's interesting. I call it interesting now. I wouldn't have called it that at the time. But it was this thing where I could see, wow, I am so hard on myself and I'm believing everything I'm thinking and I'm feeling so much discomfort and all of that is here. And while I was even planning this binge, and definitely while I was in the middle of it, all of that went away for a minute. It's like my mind just got quiet and I felt peaceful for, I don't know, at most 45 minutes by the time I planned it and executed, at the very most. It was like there was such a quiet there. And again, at the same time, and definitely right after, there was the opposite of quiet. There was a ton of guilt and shame and fear, really. I had seen this in movies. Like I wasn't bulimic. What was I doing? And so that scared me. And I started labeling myself. And there was all of this back and forth. But that really was kind of the beginning of what became a pretty common occurrence for me. That was the beginning of my bulimia and binge eating um, for the next 8 years. And so for 8 years after that day, um, at at worst, I was doing that multiple times a day with very little break. At best, and there were periods where it was much better, I was doing that maybe once a week. And I would have 5, 6, 7 days where it wasn't really on my mind. And then the cycle. So there was the same cycle, but maybe the cycle extended a little bit. And the thing is, I never felt free of it. And that's what I think matters, like I never felt free of it, even when I had 5, 7 days, even if it was longer. I always kind of knew I hadn't seen anything different about it. I knew I felt like a complete victim of my next urge. Like whenever have this feeling again, what else am I going to do? Of course I'm going to act on it. I felt completely powerless when it came to that desire and those urges. And I did everything. So am trained as a psychologist. I was working in a corporate job. I was working as a psychologist, but not with people in this way at that time when this first started. Um, but I was like, all about self-help and bettering yourself and therapy and all of that. So I did it all to try to help this issue. I mean, all of it, from the therapy to the crystals to you name it, to every diet under the sun, to thought stuff, to energy stuff, everything. And what I what I knew at the time and what I really see now is all of that made it worse. And I don't at all mean that none of that is sometimes helpful. So a lot of that was helpful in moments at times. It really was. But in the bigger picture, I was looking right at this problem that looked like a problem. It looked to me like I have this binge eating disorder, which is what I was eventually diagnosed with. Bulimia, I was eventually diagnosed with. I have these things, meaning in my mind, they come up, they take over. I'm pretty much hopeless against them. I'm just kind of a victim of them. And I need to do something to manage this. I need to get myself out of this. I need to either see things, like I need to think differently because I knew my thoughts were involved in this, right? I need to think differently. And to me at that time, what that meant was changing my thoughts, thinking more positively, maybe questioning my negative thoughts. So much work that in the middle of an urge to binge eat, there's no way I'm going to be able to set that feeling aside and do some work. So I either need to think differently, I need to feel differently, which at that time meant somehow coping with these feelings. There were things like, surfing urges and all this stuff that people were talking about, still talk about. But it was very much about like managing and coping with a feeling. And the feeling was, and even my therapist told me this, like, yes, the feeling is huge and it's powerful and it leads you to do all these things. But don't worry, we can teach you some strategies that might sometimes help you cope. And by the way, their best strategies were things like go for a walk, journal. Yeah, no, not going to happen. So I either had to think differently, I had to get myself to feel differently or to manage my feelings differently, or I had to behave differently in my mind. And that was all about, again, like, what do I do when this happens? How can I search? How can I scan my environment for the triggers? I have to always looking for triggers so that I could avoid those triggers so that I would not have to feel the feelings, like, and it just, it kept pointing me toward this thing that felt so solid, so big, so real, so scary. And I was tiny next to it. So that's why when I say all of that stuff I was doing made it worse, again, I'm not at all ever saying that taking a walk won't help in a moment. Sure, it will at times. That, that energy work, that therapy, all of that stuff can be amazing at times. But it's coping with something that it's all an attempt to kind of manage or deal with or cope with something that we're assuming is this real big powerful thing, or else why would we need to manage, cope with it, right? Like when my kid's afraid of a monster under his bed, I don't teach him how to manage it or cope with it. I take him to the floor, we look under the bed together, and I show him, see, there is no monster, because when he sees that, there's nothing to cope with. Everything I was doing, and I would say 98% of everything that's being done out there in the world by super well-meaning professionals, by self-help people, by everyone to kind of deal with these sort of issues, treats our experience, our thoughts and feelings, our experience, as if it is this powerful, big, stable, real thing that we need to manage or cope with. And looking there and feeling that, believing that about it, and constantly having it on your mind, and what do I do? And it, I just don't see it ever leading to actual freedom. Sometimes it leads to sobriety, if we want to call it that. So again, sometimes I could sit there and say, I am not going to binge today. I don't care what happens. And maybe I wouldn't. But all that does is make the feelings come back. Like, you didn't see anything new. You just worked your way, willpowered your way through a feeling. So so that's kind of how it was for me for 8 years. And again, this isn't only about me, and it isn't only about binge eating. So I'm just sharing my experience. But really, why this webinar is for binge eating and overeating, and it could be for many other things, really, is that I want you to kind of see it all as the same in a sense. So it's definitely not the same in terms of degree or frequency or any of that, but that's not really where we're looking. Again, we're not looking at the behavior and how it shows up in life. We want to look in this conversation and this understanding that has helped so many people. We want to look deeper than the thoughts and feelings and behaviors and how something's showing up to really what's going on. Um, so in kind of more overeating terms, where I felt this huge hijacking urge to go eat tons and tons of food in secret, that could be a little less extreme for you. That could be you're walking by the candy dish at your, at work in the office, or you go by the break room and you feel the cookies calling to you. It could be a much more minor, moderate, if you want to call it that, but nonetheless hijacking kind of feeling that leads you to do things that you really don't want to be doing. So it's all the same in that regard. So let me start to say a bit about what changed and how it looks now, and how this has looked for a lot of people. So after all of that time of fighting and looking right at my experience over and over and trying to make it better and different, um, I came across some this understanding. I came across some different ways of seeing things that completely flipped it. So one of the early things that I saw was that my brain, this is just in very psychological terms still, like it was just a very like low hanging fruit. This is one of the first little insights I really had, was that my brain was giving me these urges to go, run out of work and hide and eat a bunch of food and whatever that was. Or again, if maybe it's more minor, to just eat food that I didn't want for comfort, because it was trying to help me. So because I had done that, and like I said about my very first big binge that I remember, it felt really good. I had so much stuff on my mind. My mind was going so fast that doing this really did kind of quiet my mind for a minute. Now, the food didn't. Like massive amounts of sugar don't, like, they do things chemically to you, of course, but we could all eat massive amounts of sugar and feel horrible, or we could do it and feel wonderful. And the reason it felt wonderful is because I had so much on my mind. And a big part of that was, don't eat. You're not allowed to eat today. Your life's horrible. You better get this in order. It was so much that this act was kind of my way of rebelling. But the bigger point in that is my brain, when it was so busy and I felt so horrible, and it saw, oh, there's something that helped her feel better, it remembered that, because your brain loves you and it wants you to feel better and it wants to keep you alive. Now, it's obviously a horrible solution, right? It's a horrible way toward feeling better. But a machine in your head doesn't know that. And that's really, I mean, we give our brains so much credit, and we should. It's an amazing machine, but it's a machine in your head. It's like it's an appliance. I mean, it's a machine. so so the machine learned, and it learns for all of us. Oh, yeah, do this. Oh, yeah, do that. Do this, do that. And it gives you those thoughts and the feelings that come along with it. And that doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean that that's good for you. It doesn't mean it's actually going to help in the big picture. We know it isn't. When I started to see, oh, this is basically an appliance in my head just doing what it's been programmed to do. And if I don't keep giving into it, it's going to stop demanding this. that that was the beginning of something for me. It was the beginning of something, because no longer did it look like I'm this horrible, guilty, shameful person. Look at this disgusting habit I have. Look at how horrible me is. It didn't look so personal in that way anymore. And that was gigantic. That is huge. And I see that be something that's so huge and so helpful for many, many people. It's not about you. Whatever your habit is, whatever your habit is, it is not a flaw of you. You aren't wanting it, or you wouldn't be here. You aren't choosing it in full, ability to make any kind of rational choice you want. You're choosing it because it looks like the only thing that's going to help you feel better in that moment. But you're not like choosing it, like you choosing it. You don't want it. And I know, I remember this, but I hear all the time from people who are kind of newer to finding their own freedom from binge eating and overeating, say, yeah, but I love it. Are you sure I'm not choosing it? Like, it feels good and I dream about it and I want it in some way, even though they also don't. Yeah, exactly. It feels good because it quiets our mind, but it doesn't mean that you want it or that it means something about you or anything like that. Not even close. It's a machine in your brain that is just doing what it thinks it needs to do to keep you alive. And there's a lot more in that. You can read that in a little book, A Big Change. We don't have time to go into a lot of the brain stuff, And it's not the most important point of this either, by the way, but you know, it makes sense. Our brain thinks it's a survival kind of thing, and it's just trying to keep you alive. So that was the beginning of something for me, because it no longer looked like this super personal, Amy's got this issue sort of thing. Now, where that left me though was less than free, because it was like, okay, well, if I like, my brain's just throwing a fit, you know, because that's what it's conditioned to do. And when I feed it, it quiets down, and it also learns, oh, keep doing that. That worked, right? It's like a kid having a temper tantrum and you hand it candy, it's going to keep doing that. That's what my brain was doing. And knowing that, again, it was helpful because it wasn't personal. But then it was like, okay, well, now how do I stop feeding it? Like, it felt better. It felt a little easier and nicer that it wasn't personal. But it was still like, okay, well, now what? Because again, the best I had ever heard from my therapist was to journal or to sit there and surf the urge, which was like torturous. Are you kidding me? It was torture. Or to examine your thoughts, or, you know, so many things that never ever did it, never were really helpful, because again, it looked like this thought and feeling and urge, whatever you want to call it, this psychological experience was me, it was mine, it was there to take over, it was powerful. So to look right at that and to sit with it, and to, or to do something like take a walk or a bubble bath to try to distract from it, just sounded absurd, and it never worked for me. Maybe it's worked for others. It never, I wasn't that strong. It never worked for me. So so what I began to see after that though is what really started to change things. And it's so hard to put words to it. And again, knowing that we only have so much time to do so. So please just see if you can kind of get a bigger feel from where we're kind of pointing here. And what I began to see was that I didn't have a binge eating problem. I wasn't a binge eater. I wasn't this disgusting person with this shameful habit. I wasn't a mental basket case, which is what I thought created the habit. I wasn't, you know, all of that. It wasn't me. It wasn't so personal, that I actually was healthy. I actually had lots of times where I was totally normal around food. I wasn't obsessing about it at all. It was just there. I could take it or leave it. Now, in the middle of my 8 years of binge eating and bulimia, I'm not kidding you. Like, I was blind to that. I was blind to that. You could have asked me, oh, yeah, but aren't you kind of normal around food sometimes? And I would have said no. And that's only because I was constantly working on it in my own head. I was constantly thinking, okay, here's what I ate yesterday, and here's what I should eat today, and here's the thought turnarounds I should do, and here's how I should see things now, and here are the mantras, and maybe if I go to this seminar, it'll help me. It was a full-time thing, and it was so in my face. I was like, my head was in the clouds. It was like all I could do was just see this problem. That, sure, I could say, yeah, I had a day last week where I didn't binge or something like that, but it just looked like, I don't know what happened there. Like that, I could write that off. My mind could write that off so easily. And it really, because all of my focus was on this as a stable problem that was mine. And what I began to see was, oh my gosh, when I'm not staring at my thoughts and feelings and what I ate and this problem, there's a whole nother world in there. And it sounds crazy because now when I look at it, it's like, of course, many times it was not an issue. Many times I was just at ease. I just eat a meal, no big deal. Many times even I would start to have a thought about binging, and maybe I'd get distracted, or I'd say, no, can't do that today, or whatever. And the thought would change. But again, in the moment of it, I was blind to that. And I see that in so many people. We just don't see what we're not looking for and what we don't believe is the case. So what started to happen is my whole idea of who I am, who all people are, again, was not a personal thing. It was more an understanding, a concept, an idea of who we are as human beings, is that we are this space beyond our experience. We are full of health, full of resilience. Eating is no big deal. It's just what we do. We make choices by common sense. We have not lost our hunger signals. Like, We know what to do. We are full of common sense, full of wisdom, full of health and resilience. And and so that's us. That's always there. It's never gone anywhere, no matter how long you've had any issue you've had, no matter how deep you are in it. It has never gone anywhere. That's never not the truth. And we have thoughts and feelings that move through us. And I love like just kind of imagining it. I mean, there's so many metaphors for this, but like the weather is the one people always resonate with the most. It's like we are the sky, we are healthy. The blue sky is never not the blue sky. And all kinds of weather moves through that blue sky. It can be a tornado, it can be a thunderstorm, it can be a light shower, or there can be no clouds there at all. It can be a beautiful day. All of that weather, it doesn't touch the sky. The sky's not like, oh no, I'm a storm now. The sky's the sky, right? There's a storm moving through. Now, stick with me here because this is huge. This is so huge. When I really came to like deeply see that, deeply see, oh my gosh, I've been okay this whole time. And I've been feeling my brain tell me to eat because my poor, cute little brain thought that's what it should do. I thought that was the best thing to do. And I've been feeling all these rules and all this discomfort and all this shame and all this hatred toward myself. And my mind trying to fix it all, my mind creating it all and then trying to fix it all. I've been in all this weather thinking that was me, thinking that was life, and that I needed to somehow figure out how to change the weather or stop the weather or even cope with the weather, manage the weather. And of course, I couldn't do that. I mean, how do you literally, we human beings are part of nature, the same nature that's responsible for outside weather. We can't change that, right? We don't even have to manage it or cope with it. All we have to do is understand it and see how it works. So what I began to really embody, like really deeply see was, wow, when these urges come upon me, and even before that, just this little bit of discomfort or whatever it would be, whatever I feel, it's not me. It's my psychology. That's the way I would say it today. It's my psychology. It's my thoughts. It's my feelings. And they're not even mine. So even that doesn't sound right to say, but it is thought. It is feeling. It is human weather. It is experience moving through. And the only problem we ever really have is that we think it's us. I felt that and said, oh no, okay. It was like handing it the keys. Like, okay, no, you're right. You drive. You're here. I'm powerless. It's just how it looked. But when I saw that it's not like that, it's like that cosmic joke where you kind of, it's hilarious when you sort of see it. I was like, oh my gosh, for this long, this many years, I've been handing over the keys to any uncomfortable feeling, any little voice that says, just go buy a bunch of food, that'll make it better. Or I'm here now, you might as well listen to me. I've been just like, okay. And that doesn't mean anything bad about me, right? Or you. It's like that's just how it looked. That was the only thing I knew. I couldn't see any different until I could. So once I saw, oh, feeling moves through. And you know what? Even a feeling that we call an urge or a craving or worse, torture, or this feels terrible or whatever it is, all that really is energy. It's life. It's life energy. It's made of the same life energy that we say is excitement or anticipation or love or any of that. It's energy. But it's like our brain, our psychology feels that and says, oh no, here's an urge. Oh no, you're going to do, so there's all this commentary attached to this energy that's totally safe. And in and of itself, like it can't make you do anything. So beginning to see that, and again, I can't say enough. I've been talking for like 36 minutes. Please don't think that this has to have like completely landed with you where you're like, oh, I see it too. I'm free. Like this is an ongoing exploration. All I'm asking of you right now is if you can just see how this could be different, first of all, from maybe what you've been trying in the past, and how this could lead to freedom. Because when we are like the sky, we are like the anchor, right? We're okay. We're like the bottom of the ocean. We're okay. And the waves or the storms or the clouds or whatever moves through us it's just moving through us. It's not making you come along. It's not making you do anything. It's not yours. It can't not move. Like that's huge. When I really was, I don't know what I would have said if you had asked me, but I was convinced on some level that once I feel this horrible feeling, the only way it's going to go away is if I binge eat. And that is so not the case at all. But when I believed that, of course I did what made sense to do, right? When I saw, oh no, this is just energy. And again, I know that sounds like a easy thing, like, oh, easy for her to say, it's just energy. It's something to just explore. It's something to just say, like, what if this is just energy moving through me? And then my mind has all these conditioned stories about it. It's an urge. You better do it. You know what happened last time, blah, 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 blah. If you can see that too, all of that thinking, that's not true. There's no truth in that. I mean, it's a misunderstanding. Everything we're feeling is safe. Everything we're feeling moves through us. And we innocently get caught up in this misunderstanding that it's not safe, it doesn't move, and it means stuff about us. And so we jump in and try to manage it. And again, like pretty much even all the best professionals out there, unfortunately, are still kind of seeing things in a way where as if this is this stable thing that you need to fight or cope with or manage. And it's so much bigger than that. And there's so much more to see to where it just becomes safer, where you can feel things, you can think things, eating related or not, anything. And and it just begins to look like your experience. So I've literally seen thousands of people when I found my own freedom about 10 years ago. um and I knew like it, like nothing else I had ever seen. I knew I was done because I had seen something new. Like I had seen that I'm not this experience, and I never in it, I'm going to feel stuff in life. We all are. But I never have to give in or let it like it just looked so different. It looked like, oh, there's me and then there's experience. It's kind of like um those like hidden pictures pictures those pictures where there's all kinds of craziness on there and there's stuff hidden, like kids do them a lot, and you have to kind of find the hidden pictures in this big mess, or like a Where's Waldo sort of thing. I don't know what it's called in the UK, but I know you have a version. It's not Waldo. I can't remember his name. I think it starts with a W. I just heard that recently. But so the point is, when you're staring at it and you're staring with this rigid view, like I was when I was like, I have this problem, I have to change it, I have to eat differently, I have to think differently. You have this very rigid view. You can't really see anything. When you see Where's Wally? Yes. When you see things, when you see things is when you relax. So when your eyes relax, and this is the metaphor for us in our sense here, like when we kind of relax, when I relaxed and saw, oh, I don't have this horrible disease, I'm not this horrible person, I'm just taking thoughts and feelings really seriously and doing what I think I need to do. It, like, so much weight just dropped off, and I could see so much more. So it's like that health that was always there, that blue sky that was always there. I couldn't see it before because all I could see was the problem. As soon as I started to relax a tiny bit, this all flipped to where I saw the health everywhere. And right now I see the health everywhere. I see the health in all of you and everyone I work with all the time. You could tell me that you ate or did or said or felt anything, and I know you're okay. Like, there's not a question in my mind. Like, you are okay. That is not you. That is your experience moving through you. So this is how I see it go for a lot of people that I've worked with, is it starts to flip. We start to see that we're the breaks from the habit. That's who we really are. That's us coming back home. And the experience is just the experience. And all that happens is we get a little caught up in it. We think it's us. We take it to, it takes us down a little bit. And that's okay. Like, that's going to happen in life. But the more we get this bigger feel for how this all works, oh my gosh, it changes everything. So everyone's different, and how and when all of this lands with people is different for everyone. But very often what starts to happen is we just feel some space. So you have experience, you're thinking again, you might be stressed out about work, or you're busy about this, or your mind's going crazy about whatever, or you're feeling an urge, or you're feeling this big pull to eat. And rather than that being something that totally consumes you, it just begins to feel like something that's kind of moving through you. Now, again, I'm just trying to describe it in words, and that I'm sure many people would say have different words to describe it in other ways, but just see if you can get a feel for it. It's kind of like, oh, okay, I see you. I feel that. This is okay. But you don't lose that touch with yourself, with what's really true, which is the health and the resilience and the ability to feel stuff. And that even if you do act on it, you always are getting a new chance. None of this is stable. Like, we are not stable. We're always refreshing and getting new chances and coming right back here. And we only have these habits. They only feel like long, stable habits because we keep innocently thinking that that's who we are. So I can see this for myself so much. Like, I would wake up and automatically, what did I eat yesterday? How's today going to go? Like, my mind just brought it all back. And so of course it wasn't my experience, but that's not what nature wanted. Like, I woke up for a minute before that hit my mind and I was free. I wasn't a binge eater. I was free. And that's what starts to grow for people. Maybe your mind goes back, but you see, oh, that's my mind going back. So, um, again, I just am so hopeful. And like, it's, it's been amazing in the last 10, 11 years since I've been free of this to really get to see so many people find their own freedom from this, and not through coping and not through white knuckling, not through trying so hard, like really seeing, oh my gosh, that's not me. So let me tell you a little bit. I want to go to some of your questions, but I just want to say a little bit about the Little School of Big Change, because it is where I help most people. It's the only way to work with me these days, and how I personally help people see all of this in a much deeper way. Now, again, I totally understand that what I kind of just spit out for 40 minutes is a lot. It's big stuff. So if you even just can sort of see how, oh my gosh, I used to be looking over here of fix it, do it, manage it, and that this is a whole different direction. And that if this feels like it has hope, has potential, it absolutely does. If you're one of those people that have tried everything like I was and nothing has helped, and you end up beating yourself up thinking there's something wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just been looking over here where everything points us. Every book, everything points us over here, basically. And we're just looking over here. So the Little School of Big Change is a school that I created off the heels of the success of the Little Book of Big Change. It's a 6-week course. It's amazing. I love it. I lead it twice a year. It is full of video content and lessons that step by step walk you through in a very slow, kind of deliberate way through kind of this understanding. So who are we really? How does our experience work? How is it that we get, from the brain side of things, how is it that we get so caught up in habits, whether it's binge eating or overeating or any habit, because they're all the same at that level. Why is it that we get so caught up in this and we think that we are our experience? And how do we start to see around that? So we begin to look less at the thoughts, the specific thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and we start to back up and we see this bigger picture emerge of like, oh, none of that's me. And I'm not kidding you. It's like it flips in focus, like where's Wally or where's Waldo? It like flips in focus where you're like, oh my gosh, I can feel stuff and it's not going to kill me and I don't have to do what it says. And again, my words don't really do it, but you really start to feel into this. So the course is a 6-week course. Um, you get video content every week, and you have lifetime access to that content. It's been tested over multiple groups. I'm running it for the 7th time coming up soon. So it's been run many, many times, tweaked and tested. 98% of people who have gone through this program say that it put them on the path to lasting change, meaning they were looking over here at what do I fix? What do I do? What's wrong with me? And it pointed them in a direction that started to change from the inside out, so that there's no more managing and coping and all of that. It's like a sea change. They see things differently now. And when you see things differently, you can't really get caught up in habits in the same way. I mean, it's just different. Everything looks different. Your experience looks different. So, um, back to the school. So I get very passionate about sharing this, and I just want to say as much as I can. So the school is a 6-week course. You get video content that you're walked through every week for 6 weeks. You also get my personal support. So I lead 2 group calls every week, 90-minute calls. It's all recorded. Again, there's people from 42 countries in the school, from multiple time zones. So everything is really designed so that anyone from anywhere in the world at any time can get a ton of value from this, because I lead these 2 group calls every week where I'm coaching, I'm taking your questions, I'm keeping an eye on you, seeing where you have a blind spot, seeing where like what's landing with you and maybe what's not, and really doing a lot of coaching on those calls. Everything's recorded. We have a private forum that's not on Facebook. It's within our website, totally private, where myself and 2 of my coaches are in there 24/7. So around the clock, we're answering your questions. Like, you'll never wait very long to get a response, and you can use that form as much as you want. It gets very active. Now, for some people, what I just said just gave you hives. Like, for some people, they're like, "Oh no, I don't want to be on a forum." You don't have to be on the forum. So people love it, or they don't love it so much, and it doesn't matter. It's just there for your benefit if it works for you. So you get all of this content. It walks you through. It really walks you through this understanding from nothing to a really kind of deep sense of how things work. You get my support along the way for 6 weeks, a ton of it, as much of it as you want, really. You have our support in the forum all the time. You have lifelong access to all of that content. And then when the 6-week course ends, we have a graduate community that's totally optional. I won't talk about that much now, but I just want you to know that at the end of the 6 weeks, where people come out just seeing things so differently, so differently. There's some amazing testimonials I can share with you. I mean, it's amazing what opens up for people. At the end of that time, though, if you want to stay connected with this, and many people do, there are options for that. So as I mentioned, I lead the Little School of Big Change because it takes all my time. I'm in there all the time. I do it twice a year only. So the next course is starting March 2nd. That's in about 3 weeks, a little bit less than 3 weeks. So you can join the Little School of Big Change at any time. You can pre-enroll. If you pre-enroll for the March 2nd course before March 2nd, so pre-enroll before it starts, you save $47. So the price is $497 is the regular price. And again, that's for lifetime access to all the content, support, constant support for 6 weeks. If you pre-enroll, so if you join before March 2nd, it's $450. And also, because you guys were on this webinar, we have another bonus. So if you pre-enroll in the Little School of Big Change, once you get your login and your password and you're seeing all the stuff and you're waiting for the March 2nd course to start, you'll see a bonus video. You get it right away. So it gives you something to do in the meantime. And it's really, really great. It goes into what I shared here in a deeper way and a slightly different way. So it kind of gives you a nice boost and gets you ready for the school to start. So the website, I'll put it here. Oh, Bill put it here in the chat. So there's a link right there where you can check out the school. And I would love to have you. I mean, I can't say enough about this school, how much I love the people that are there, how the community and sharing and seeing people, many people with binge eating and overeating issues, but many people with other issues too, coming together all at once and looking in this bigger direction. And way more than my coaching and my support, people see so much and have so many insights from others. So, and it's often not others that even have their issue. So a lot of times the people that come in for binge eating, for example, listen to someone who's really caught up in anxiety or really caught up in some phobia, or they have some other habit. They have a hoarding habit or a gambling habit. And you can see what I'm talking about here in them. You can see it in them before you see it in yourself, because that's just how we work. Our own stuff looks really personal and really complicated. But when you see, oh my gosh, he's fine. she's fine. She just has these thoughts and she thinks her thoughts are her. You know, he just has this feeling and he thinks it's him. You start to see that in other people, and it's amazing how that leads to your own insight. So there really is something magical about this community, about any community, I think, but especially this community where we're looking in this direction. And I tell people all the time, I don't do private coaching anymore, but for 450, that's like 2 sessions maybe with most coaches. This program is so much better. Being in a group is so much better. I think, again, it's always different for everyone, but for the most part, by and large, being in a community and a group where it's not all about you, it's looking toward how we all work and how we're all in this innocent misunderstanding and we all fear our experience. It just goes so far and it does so much. So I would love to see you in the course that starts really soon. So let me go to some of the questions. Thank you so much, you guys, for hanging on and for just for being here. It's hard because I see so much in this, and it's very hard to distill it sometimes. So again, I know I've said this, but I'll just say it again. If this even kind of resonates, if it kind of points you toward a direction of hopefulness or curiosity, please keep listening, keep exploring. The school is an immersion. It's a fast, effective, deep way to do that, but it's not the only way. So if the school is not in the cards for you right now, listen to my podcast, read my book. There's other people, listen to other podcasts around this understanding, like read other books, but just please stay in the conversation around this because I tell you, it's life-changing. And I know that's very cliche, but it just is. um, Oh my gosh. Okay. So there's one question. I'm going to keep these anonymous. But it says, do you think Little School Big Change is suitable for a 15-year-old? I've had people as young as 14 in the school. And what I love about this understanding is that it's not about us. Like it's so universal and it's not about the intellect. So you can be young, you can be, you don't have to, you don't think about it. It's almost the opposite. The less you think, the more you let it wash over you, the more you see. And younger people tend to be really good at that because they have less of a history of being very caught up in their thinking. So email me, you know who you are, if you want to talk more about that and the specific 15-year-old that you're referring to. But yes, it's super helpful for people of that age. Okay, so there's a question actually in the chat that I think is a great one. I want to get to a few of these, but I just want to make sure I'm getting ones that are really representative of what seems to be on most people's minds. So Kathleen in the chat says, when you say that the experience is not us, what do you mean by that? Do you mean we're the soul? I'd love more clarity on what you mean by the experience is not us. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a big question. And it's one that in many ways I can't really answer for you, but it is the question, if that makes sense. So this is the essence of everything. Like if this experience, thoughts, again, what I mean by experience is, I say it so much, I just think it's obvious, but I know it is totally not. When I talk about experience, I'm talking about our thoughts, our feelings, our inclinations, our pulls, our urges, our cravings, like all experience pretty much. We are like a fish in water with our experience. We think something, we feel something, and again, imagine like a helmet. Our experience is like in that helmet, and it's never occurred to us that we can take the helmet off, that there's anything outside of this little helmet. So to start to get curious, and that's always where we go, like, who are we beyond this experience? When you're not so caught up in this, what do you feel? What do you sense? What's there? Like, what feels like it's the us in a sense that never changes? Because we all know our experience constantly changes. Our thoughts, our feelings, even the stuff we call stable, like our habits or our anxiety or our depression, our habitual thinking, it is always changing, always. We just don't see it because we're telling ourselves it's always there. So we see what we expect to see in a sense. So like to be curious about who this is beyond our experience is huge. And it's amazing. And you start to get a feel for that on your own. So I don't want to put too many words to it because everyone would use different words, but I just want to speak to that, the point that that's a really great question. And it is so much of like the exploration for us to each do for ourselves. Okay, let me see. You're welcome. Let me see what else. Okay, so there's a question about, is failing, which to this person's definition means binge eating or purging, is failing a part of recovery, or is it simply making my urges worse? So I've been listening to Brain Over Binge, which seems to help for a couple days, and then I allow the other voice to win. The days I binge and purge are very disheartening. Is failing part of recovery, or is it simply making my urges worse? So I get a million questions like this. Again, I know this is so where we're pointed to. I failed, I binged, I purged, this voice, that voice. I really want you to see this is not that. This is not that kind of conversation. This goes so much bigger and so much deeper. All the voices are one voice. There's not like, let me hear my binge voice and do something with it. All thought, all feeling, all experience, it all moves through you. It's all safe. It's all not you. It's all not yours. Your mind is what says you failed, you succeeded, you did get good, you did bad. You're on the path to recovery. This is not a part of recovery. Like whatever, that's all a bunch of thinking. So when we're looking at the level, at that level of this voice, and then that voice wins, it's hard to see. So hard to see there. We want to back way up. What this understanding does is it gets you way out of different voices and all of that kind of stuff, and it helps you just see that you are okay no matter what moves through you. And again, I get that that's kind of vague right now, but I just want you to see like where your questions, like right here, this understanding is way back here. It's a totally different kind of conversation. Again, like so many people are at that place, right? Where it's like, well, I get it. I get what you're saying, but I still give in to my urges, or I still can only go for like a week without binging, and then it comes back. And I understand that, but keep listening, like, because it goes so much deeper than I get it, but I still give in. Like that whole conversation will change the more you see this in a much deeper way, to where it's not even about days and counting and this happened and that happened. Like that's part of life, but your focus is somewhere else. Like you're seeing that you are your health. You're seeing that all experience is not yours, that you can't help, it cannot stop moving. It must move through you by itself. When you really come to see that stuff in a more deep way, like, oh my gosh, like it is just in motion constantly. It no longer makes sense to pull it in and say, yeah, but look what I did yesterday. Yeah, but look what I ate over here, or look what happened. Like it just, your whole, everything changes. That doesn't even make sense anymore. So again, I know if you're really new to this, that might be a little bit vague right now, but stick with it, because it becomes really clear. And when that shift happens, it's huge. Okay, I know we're at the top of the hour. I just want to see if I can maybe address like one or two more questions. Um, I want to encourage you, because there's so many amazing questions here. I want to encourage you to stay in touch with me. And there are going to be other opportunities to have your questions answered. You could email me even. There are going to be question and answer sessions coming up. So please, if something is really burning for you and I didn't get a chance to do it here, um, I would love to be able to just stay in touch and answer some of your questions. So there's a few questions on here about setting boundaries, about like, um, and about, how to have like moderate weight loss and all of that kind of stuff. And I can kind of lump those together in a sense and say, your common sense will tell you what to do when it comes to that. So if your strategy starts with, do I keep this in the house or do I not? Do I eat this or do I not? it's too in the weeds. There is no answer. There is no universal answer for that. Like, it has to kind of be what makes sense to you. There are so many times when for a particular person in a particular moment, not having the food in the house is the wisest thing to do. The next day it literally might be the complete opposite answer. So again, I want to keep you away a little bit and to have you just kind of notice where your mind is wanting to say, yeah, but what do I do? What's the strategy? How do I eat? How do I behave? And we're looking in a totally different place. But the beauty in that is when we look in this different place, when we look at the bigger picture, all of those little how do I do, what do I do things, they just take care of themselves. I mean, look at children. Like, they just know how to eat, they know how to move, they know how to act. They do what makes sense to them, right? They don't talk about hunger signals, and like, they just eat when they're hungry, they stop when they're full, they move when they feel like they need to move. We have this built into us. So when we're overthinking it, which we all are to some degree, when we're overthinking it, acting as if we need to manage our experience. Like, I need to figure this out. And what do I do here? It's just, we're just kind of looking in the wrong direction, right? We want to keep looking bigger. And a lot of this stuff really kind of does show up. Okay, one more question and then I'm going to wrap up. So this question is about what does it look like? I have an urge to binge. Now I'll do it. What will flip? I have an urge. Oh, wait, that's just a feeling. This is this person kind of giving me their thought process. Let it be. Even when I try to do that now, I still binge. Yes. If I distract myself, it may help, but maybe not. Exactly. But that's a coping mechanism. Are you saying that the course gets into specific steps of what to do? No. I'm saying that right now I don't know you, but I can just tell from the question, you have a feel for this direction, right? You kind of have a sense that there's something bigger here, that you, like you say, that your urges are feelings, that everything's moving through you, but there's a lot more to see. It's like, again, if my kid is saying, mommy, there's a monster under my bed, you have to slay it right now. He doesn't fully, and I say, no, there's no such thing as monsters. And he says, okay, I know there's no such thing as monsters, but can you please slay the monster? He doesn't really know that there's no such thing as monsters, right? He kind of does, like something in his head gets it, but there's so much more to see. And when he sees that there's no such thing as monsters, he couldn't fake being afraid of it. It has flipped. So what the school does is give you that flip. It's not going to give you steps, because steps are always going to fall short. Steps are just somebody else telling you what to do. It's ridiculous. We don't need someone else to tell us what to do. We have everything we need. It is that blue sky. Like, that is who we are. We have everything we need. We need nothing that we don't have. You are full of common sense. You know how to eat. You are so resilient. You are stronger than any feeling. You can manage anything. You just don't see that right now. So what this program does, what this understanding does, is help people see that. And when you see that, you're no longer asking what the steps are or the how-tos. I hope that's helpful. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Again, I really, really appreciate your attention and your amazing questions. And I really, again, encourage you that if anything here just resonates or feels hopeful, please keep looking. I'd love to have you in the school. It's an amazing way to see this much more deeply and get a lot of support. And either way, please find a way to stay connected, because we don't have to have these habits. I mean, complete freedom. You don't have to cope with it. You don't have to manage it. Freedom is so much closer than it seems. We've just been looking in the wrong direction. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you soon.